If I've got the power and you've got the power, then who's got the power? Everybody!
Thank you for joining us at Uncovering Mr. Right, a Voice Enterprises Incorporated sound production for entertainment purposes only. All the views and opinions by our guests are their own.
Thanks for chiming in. It's Miss Wright, bringing it once more from the Motor City. And today we're going to get a man's perspective on finding his Miss Right, and hopefully some helpful tips for us ladies. Today we have Ty from D.C. Ty, I want to thank you again for joining us. I want you to be comfortable, truthful, and just be yourself, and let the audience see things through your eyes. Now, if at any point you think I'm digging a little bit too deep, just let me know. But first, I want to get some general feedback on your views of relationships, and then we'll move into more specifics about your love life. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Well, I get this question a lot from my lady friends, and I just wanted to get your advice on it. They're always like, Trina, how do I know if he's digging me? So can you tell me how a lady would truly know if a guy is into her? Or so-called, what signs should she look for?
Typically, when a man's interested in a woman, he makes time for her. I mean, she doesn't really have to question that. So if she's questioning whether or not he's into her, then chances are he may or may not. She just may be an option.
Okay, all righty. Now, do you believe that there is only one love for everyone, or can people love multiple people at one time in different multiple relationships?
I mean, that's very situation specific, depending on the individuals involved. There are some people who are polyamorous who can love more than one person at a time. But for myself, I mean, I just devote my full attention to one person at a time. It just works out better for me that way.
So, so you're saying that you do think that some people can love more than one person at a time. It just depends on an individual circumstance and that person?
Definitely.
Okay. What would you say was the first thing that attracts you to a lady?
I mean, it's definitely going to be physical. I mean, because that's the initial attraction. And again, that's something that varies from man to man. But I mean, for me personally, I'm definitely attracted to a woman with curves.
Okay. She gotta have the curves. I hear you.
You gotta have the curves.
What are your turn-offs initially when you meet a lady?
Turn on?
Your turn-off.
Turn off?
Yes, your turn-off. What turns you off?
I guess lack of focus. I mean, a lot of times women, they can't focus on one thing. I mean, if she's looking for me to be into her, then I would essentially expect her to give me that same interest and be into me. If she's kind of into her cell phone or, chatting it up with her friends or, across the room or something, that doesn't necessarily have me gravitating toward her or, very loud women. I'm like a very soft-spoken woman and, someone who I can kind of have an intimate conversation just between us.
Okay, sounds good. Now, how do you feel about interracial relationships? Some say that other races are sometimes easier to handle than black females.
How do I feel about it? I mean, I personally don't necessarily see race when it comes to love. Love is colorless. However, I mean, there are a lot of stigmatisms about race as interracial relationships. Again, for me personally, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a personality. You can be, Asian, Greek, Italian. It doesn't really matter. It's all about what you bring to the table as a person.
Okay. Don't ask, don't tell. Do you feel it's okay to not tell if you have not been asked?
No. I mean, I'm a firm believer in open, honest relationships. That seems to be the only true path to happiness. If something happens that you feel as though it needs to be discussed, then, regardless of whether they ask or not, then you should bring it up.
So you don't think that there's some things that you should possibly keep to yourself to spare another person's feelings?
No, not to spit their feelings. I mean, you do have to pick your battles. I mean, everything isn't always meant to be discussed. But there, again, when there's things that involve possible deal breakers, then I mean, regardless to what you feel about it, you should definitely bring it up and discuss it.
Got you. Now, Ty, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any children?
I do.
Okay. Good, good, very well. Um, Maybe you can answer this and maybe you can't, but what are some signs that you think that a lady can look for to see if possibly the guy that she's dating is still interested in the mother of his children?
Wow. Typically, when a guy is still interested in pursuing somebody with the mother of his children, then he'll. It's not much that she needs to look for. I mean, he'll present all the signs himself, unknowingly to him. Um,
Signs, right?
I mean, just I guess signs and the fact that he probably would go above and beyond to not do for just the kids, but to make sure that she's comfortable or that she's happy. Things that he may specifically do just for her. It may not necessarily involve the children. I mean, again, you don't have to be with someone to be a good father to your children. However, when you start going above and beyond for just the mother of your child, so there's some residual feelings still there.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Do you think that it's okay for a lady to ask a man how many sexual partners he's had? And if so, how soon in the relationship should this be asked?
I definitely think it's a question worth asking. However, it's definitely not something you should ask within the first date or two. I mean, once you guys have determined that you want to take things a little more seriously and you want to become a little more exclusive, then and again, that's at that point when you decide you want to become sexually active. I think that's something you should discuss at that point. But prior to that, it's probably definitely going to be a no-no.
Okay. How do you feel about friends of the opposite gender? And where should the line be drawn?
Friends of the opposite gender is not necessarily, again, a deal breaker. However, the smart thing to do would be to distance anyone who doesn't necessarily help benefit your relationship. So, for a man who has women who he knows is looking for something a little bit more than a friendship, he might want to not necessarily cut that friendship off, but he might want to just distance it just a little bit to make sure that the one he's with feels comfortable in her position in his life, and vice versa.
Well, just to spiral off of that, how do you feel about emotional intimacy without physical intimacy? Because intimacy can come without any type of physical interactions, which could stem from a relationship that the person's having with the opposite sex.
In my personal opinion, I think emotional intimacy is worse in some instances than physical. I mean, a physical lapse can be worked through, but when you're emotionally involved in somebody else, I don't necessarily see how you can work past that. Their emotions are no longer attached to you. Their emotions are for someone else. So all the things that you would typically do to make them smile or try to make them happy, or them little looks or glances and thoughts that they would have throughout the day, they're all for somebody else at that point. So I don't know how you can necessarily recover from that.
Okay. Hi. Well, I gotta ask. Men are always saying that they want a freak in the seat to the lady in the streets. What are your views on that statement? And do you feel the same way?
Definitely. There's a time and place for everything. In the streets, you want your woman to present herself as such, as a woman of sophistication and class. However, behind closed doors, what happens happens. And, that's not for everybody to see or know. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely true.
But okay, and just kind of talking about that, I understand how a man, wants his woman to be behind closed doors. But just to kind of piggyback that just on another subject, Do you feel as though sometimes men hold double standards, meaning that, let's just say, for instance, a lady happened to cheat on her boyfriend, yet she will be called all kind of names in the book. Let him cheat on her, and it's like, oh, okay, babe, I'm sorry, I just made a mistake. So, do you think that some males have double standards?
Definitely, men have double standards. They always, I mean, they always want to see things in a lesser light when it's them. I mean, if it's a woman, they want to just boast it out there, be very voiceful about it and let her know that she messed up and, to make sure that she feels bad enough to not possibly make that mistake again. However, when it's them, they want to kind of dim the light on it a little bit and just acknowledge it was a mistake and let's just leave it alone. The less they have to deal with it, the more opportunity they could have to possibly do it again and not get caught.
Okay. All righty. How do you feel a woman should address the issue of her lack of interest in wanting to have sex a lot? So she does, she's okay with the whole sexual thing, but maybe she doesn't have as high of a sex drive as her partner, and it's something that he wants all the time. How would you suggest that she addresses that to him?
I mean, again, it's one of those things that you have to do before you even get to that point. Before your relationship becomes intimate, you guys need to sit down and just find out if you guys are like-minded in that regard. So if he has a high sex drive and she knows that she doesn't, then at some point prior to engaging in sexual activity, they need to come to a meeting of the minds and, make sure that before they enter into that type of relationship, that it's something they can both come out satisfied.
Okay. All righty. Well, this is a topic that's currently on our Mr. Right blog, and it talks about how long should you wait after you've met someone that you should have sex with them. And if someone gave it up to you on the first date, would you look at her differently?
No, I wouldn't look at her differently necessarily. I mean, again, it's very individually specific. There are men who look just for that alone. I mean, they go out with women just to see if they can have sex with them on their first date. And then there's some people who just have a chemistry so strong that they just naturally and physically gravitate toward one another. And that doesn't necessarily determine or dictate, what your future with each other is. It just means that that's just kind of where you went. So as far as a specific timeline as to when you should or shouldn't, I don't really think that there is one. I mean, I just think it's just what feels right to you at that particular moment, and just knowing that there are repercussions and consequences behind, those type of decisions.
Okay. Let me ask you another question. Someone actually asked me this question in one of my blogs, and they wanted to know, why do men look at other women when they're out with their lady?
It's just an appreciation for the female body. I mean, again, it can be done in a sense that it's not disrespectful to your woman, because women look at men as well. And I mean, I think women just have gotten into a point where they aren't as obvious with it. I've caught several one of my girlfriends checking out other men. It just could be, the way they dressed or just the way, their physical attraction to them. I mean, and again, it's the same for men. However, men just lack a certain level of self-control in that regard.
So you're saying that by them doing that, it's showing respect to the female body?
It's an appreciation, an admiration for the female body, not necessarily respect.
And they have to show that admiration right then?
They don't have to. Again, that's why I said they have a certain lack of self-control.
Jerry, has it been 15 minutes?
Yeah, you can stop right now.
All righty. I got 4 more questions.
Okay. All right, let's take a quick pause.
All right.
1, 2, 3, go.
All righty. Let's switch gears a little bit, Ty. I want to hear a little bit about your dating life. I hear that you've possibly found your Miss Right. However, before we completely get into that, why don't you tell us what you specifically look for in the person that you would so-called want to spend your time with?
What I look for essentially is just a woman. I mean, I myself consider myself a king, and I need a woman who carries herself as a queen. I mean, I can't be looking for court jesters, and trying to make them my queen. It's just we're not gonna mesh well. So I mean, I'm looking for someone who has a certain level of self-respect, but still has dignity and class, and still has a certain level of sex appeal with her as well. Someone who's educated, motivated, goal-oriented, family-oriented. All the things every man says he wants but can never find.
And so, can you elaborate on that really fast, on the part of what every man wants but can't find?
In today's society, I think the definition of a woman has kind of been screwed over a little bit. I mean, no one, depending on your setting, your environment, people will have their own individual definition of what a woman is. So everybody looks for this one stereotype type of woman. However, there's so many variations in today's society that no one can find that one ideal, woman.
Okay. So, have you possibly found your ideal woman?
I have.
Really?
For me.
And how did you know she was ideal for you?
I couldn't begin to really tell you. I mean, I can't even express it in words. From the moment we met, we just kind of clicked, and it's just gone smoothly ever since. It's just like a natural progression. I didn't have to work at it. She didn't necessarily have to work at it. It just kind of all worked itself out.
I mean, was there something special that she did? I mean, what did she do to make you draw to her? I mean, what was so special about her? What can you tell us about her that maybe, we're doing wrong and we might want to, make some modifications on?
Yeah, essentially, upon our initial meeting, she just made me feel real comfortable. We engaged in, intelligent conversation, topics that had purpose and meaning. And she didn't necessarily make me feel like she judged me based on physical appearances alone. I felt like she was genuinely interested in who I was as a person. And from that, we engaged in, meaningful conversation. I got to know who she was on a deeper level and vice versa. And from that, we just bonded.
And this is really a person.
This is really a person, yes.
How did you meet this person, Ty?
We actually met through a mutual friend. We both kind of expressed that we were looking for something a little bit more meaningful out of life. We were tired of the casual dating scene, and they kind of took two like minds and put them together and see what would happen, and it just kind of went off without a hitch.
Well, let me ask you a hypothetical question in regards to your ideal woman that I guess you supposedly found, which is awesome. If the opportunity presented itself and there was no way for your lady to find out about you sneaking around with a female friend who you already had a relationship established with, would you?
Definitely not. I mean, for me, at this particular point in my life, there's nobody else that can provide anything more than what I've already found.
Okay. And what about marriage? What's too soon to get married in regards to you? And do you think that people should maybe wait a few weeks, a few months, a few years? What do you feel about that?
Personally, I mean, I think whatever works for your individual relationship. I've met couples rather, who known each other 9 days and got married and been married for 25 plus years. However, I've known people who waited 5 plus years to finally get married and was divorced in 2. So, I mean, again, it all depends on what works best for your specific relationship. For me personally, I don't have a designated time frame. It's just when I find that person and we decide that we're ready for that step, then we'll engage and we'll live our life accordingly.
All right. Well, before we wrap this up, Ty, are there any last-minute suggestions or advice you would like to give our listening audience on finding the right person, or even just a little encouragement?
The only thing I can say is just don't let fear of being hurt dictate your level of happiness. I mean, a lot of times we find ourselves so fearful that by letting someone in, they may hurt us, but essentially that's what love is about. Love is essentially, being vulnerable to a person and trusting them not to hurt you. So just, don't be so reserved to not let people in, and you may actually find that your Mr. Right was there the whole time. You just couldn't see him.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. I am happy to hear you found your special lady. And you'll have to join us again one day, and we'll have to see how things are working out for you, too, okay?
Definitely. Not a problem at all.
Well, you take it easy, Ty.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in for Uncovering Mr. Right. He Said, She Said with Reese Cortland and Latrina Davis. Thank you, and stay tuned for more of Uncovering Mr. Right.